Warning, some viewers may find this content disturbing, viewer discretion is advised. Reddit, what is your r/no-sleep story that actually happened? I lived in an apartment a few years ago. 4 units upstairs, 4 units downstairs. I lived upstairs, and the apartment below me was vacant. I kept hearing footsteps through the apartment, and I knew I shouldn't have. Nobody was downstairs. I asked someone to come over and listen, just to see if I was crazy. Maybe I'm just hearing other apartments since it's empty downstairs, and everything is echoing. Wrong. I kept hearing the footsteps. This went on for a solid hour. Finally I called the landlord and the police. Apparently someone had broken in through the windows downstairs, and was walking back and forth through the apartment with a knife. Freaking horrifying. While living with some friends, I got up late at night to get a drink of water from the kitchen. I didn't turn on any lights, having no trouble navigating in the dark. As I crossed through the living room, I heard some movement type noise or something and assumed it was one of my roommate's pet cat. Go to the kitchen, drink water, leave kitchen. On my way back through the living room, I hear movement noises a lot louder than an old cat should make, and I glance around. There on the couch, in the very dark living room, is a shape, roughly child-sized, with bright red eyes staring directly at me. I froze. The fear was so sudden and strong that it is in fact giving me goosebumps now. I very slowly stepped backwards, not daring to even blink as I watched the red orbs watch me. After several agonizingly long seconds, I reached the kitchen light switch, ready to defend myself when this goblin thing was sure to attack me. Click, it was my other roommate's chinchilla. It had opened its cage and escaped from their room. It was sitting on top of a pile of laundry. My bedroom is on the second floor of the house. There's no patio/porch/overhang of any kind beneath my windows. Couple of years ago I was watching TV in bed around 2 a.m. and heard a louder than usual animal sound. Not uncommon to hear squirrels running around on the roof from time to time. Didn't think much of it. Kept on happening, and started to sound awfully close to the window and not on the roof. I ignored it for a pretty long time. After at least 40 to 45 minutes of being irritated by the noise, best guess, I had watched a couple of episodes of South Park on my DVR during the time span. I banged on the wall in hopes of scaring them off until I could get to sleep. Just 2 quick bangs with my fist, which were answered with 2 bangs on the wall right next to the window from outside. Needless to say, I just about shit and jumped out of bed. Now, my living room has a bay window, and is on the other end of the house, so I could look out that window from the side and see my bedroom window. I hustle downstairs and peek out. I see a guy standing in front of my house, below my bedroom window. He's got a knife, small pocket knife, in his hand, and he's petting the front of my house. Call the police and wait. He never leaves the front of the house even when they roll up and ultimately disarm and arrest him without much struggle. I was about 19, living with a roommate, going to college while living in an apartment complex. Occasionally I get mild bouts of insomnia, but nothing serious, usually just a delay in my bedtime of an extra 2 or 3 hours. One night I suddenly just cannot sleep. Nothing will get me to relax, and I eventually give up and just sit in the front room playing Heavy Rain all night as it had just come out a few days ago. The next day when I head off to work exhausted with 0 hours of sleep, I got a text from my roommate. Dude, the police are all over the apartment complex. Apparently 9 apartments including our downstairs neighbor were broken into last night with people home sleeping. Some people even reported things being stolen from the rooms they were sleeping in. It hit me that had I not stayed up all night and left the light on in the front room, I would have been robbed or worse. When I was in 5th grade, some guy who was mentally ill had a meltdown somewhere in Chicago. Apparently he shot and killed some random guy and stole his car. He drove up I-94 towards my suburb, got off the highway, and drove straight into my neighborhood. It's very close to the exit, and just started shooting sporadically at people's houses. He somehow wound up in my backyard, which is full of trees BTW, and was just shooting in every direction. I can still vividly remember brake lights in the middle of the otherwise pitch black woods and sparks from the gunfire going off in every direction. The cops showed up and shot him to death. Luckily no one was hurt, but my neighbors did find a bullet in the middle of their mattress. Fireworks are not so fun anymore. I was living in Fort Wayne, Indiana for a short time, and the house I stayed in was on the outskirts of the main city, set way back on a dirt road in Farmville. The house is over 200 years old, and I would routinely freak myself out because of the age, location, and my only other roommates were 2 cats. Anyways, during one of the coldest nights in January, -15 F, I heard someone frantically ringing my doorbell at 2:30 to 3 a.m. slowly approaching the door to get a glimpse of my unexpected company before they realized I could see them. Suddenly I heard them thump across the wooden, wrap-around deck leading up to the front door and make their way to the big glass side door. I heard a moan/groan. I heard someone jiggle the doorknob. By this time I am calling the cops and cowering in my room with my pistol drawn. During the 25 minutes it took for the cops to make their way up there to investigate, I could hear and see the shadows of people outside each window, trying each one to see if it slid open. When the cops arrived, they walked around the house and only identified one set of footprints in the snow. And one set of drag marks. Also they could identify where and when the person being dragged was seated down in the snow at various entry points while the other guy was checking for a way in. Moved shortly after, not because of the attempted entry but because Fort Wayne, Indiana is a terrible place to live. We moved into a new house a few months ago. As we were in the process of purchasing the house, the renter who was living in it died unexpectedly of natural causes in his mid-40s. He died right in the middle of the living room. Shortly after, we move into the house, and almost immediately our 2-year-old daughter starts talking about the ghost that lives in our house. Now let's be real here, she is 2 and 2-year-olds are very impressionable. Halloween had recently passed, and she had this Halloween-themed picture book that she loved to read, so it's entirely possible that all this talk of ghosts was just coming from looking through that book on a regular basis. Still, she was always telling me that the ghost was in her playhouse in the basement, or that the ghost was on the stairs, or that the ghost was standing in the corner. She never seemed to be afraid of the ghost, and considered him to be her friend, so I wasn't all that concerned even if there really was a ghost haunting our house. If he's a nice and helpful ghost, it could certainly be a lot worse. I would often tell the ghost that he was welcome to stay if he wanted to, but he was also welcome to go if that would make him happier. I was about 30-70 on the ghost being real and she could see and talk to him versus the ghost being just her imagination fueled by her Halloween book. Until one day, when we were going out to the car to go to daycare in the morning. It was still dark out, and rainy. My daughter told me that the ghost was on the back deck, and then she told me that today was the ghost's birthday and she wanted to sing him happy birthday. Once again, I mostly disregarded what she was saying, as she is birthday obsessed and has in the past made us sing happy birthday to Mickey Mouse, a bowl of fruit snacks, and the bathroom. So we sang and wished the ghost a happy birthday and went on with our lives. Later that day, out of pure curiosity, I looked up the obituary of the man who had died in our house. And wouldn't you know it? It was his fucking birthday. Posted this before, but it's one of my family's favorite stories. My uncle called my mom one morning and told her this. I have 4 little cousins and who never got to meet my grandfather, he passed before they were born. One morning, they ran downstairs for breakfast as they usually do. As my uncle was getting their food ready, one pointed to the fridge and said, "That's him." My uncle, not thinking much of it, said, "Who?" and looked over. They were pointing at a picture of my grandfather that they never got to meet. My cousin responded, "The man that comes and talks to us at night until we fall asleep sometimes." Not horrifying, but still, eerie. I work in a small building with 3 wings and my office is located in a little back hallway of one of the wings. I share the office with another girl and it's usually pretty quiet. One evening she and I were the only ones in our wing still there and we both heard a door loudly shut in the hallway. We were both a bit confused and, upon peeking out, I noticed nothing out of the ordinary. The next 2 weeks I was staying really late to catch up on hours so I could have a winter break, and I began noticing little noises in the hallway when I was positive nobody was in the building. It sounded like a shoe sliding on the floor. This happened a couple of times. Earlier in the evenings it would just be me and the janitor, and she started getting really spooked. She said she heard doors slamming in one of the wings even though everybody had left. We investigated one night to find that all of the doors were properly locked, but I noticed that the kitchen light was on, even though the door was locked. The janitor freaked out because she knew she'd turned the light off before locking the door. I also recalled the light being on a couple of nights when I was the only one there. I started to ask around if other people in the building had experienced anything weird like that, and one lady said some of her room decorations would have moved when she came back from the bathroom. And here's the one that really creeps me out. Another lady said that one day she noticed a footprint in the middle of her desk. It's that black material that shows skin prints pretty easily. To be honest, I'd rather it be paranormal stuff, because the idea that there's a person doing all this really creeps me out. This story is not mine, it's my grandfather's. Backstory: this takes place in West Virginia in the 20s. My grandpa is the youngest of 9 and his family is very poor. They all live in a 1-room house. My grandpa's sister suddenly got sick and quickly fell into a coma. They say she had a fever and would shake and even sit up in the middle of the night even though she was not conscious. She got progressively worse over the next few days and needed some sort of help. My grandpa and his oldest sister Glenna stayed behind while the rest of the family went to the neighbor's house 10 miles down the road for some food and medicine. As soon as the family got home that night, their mom went to the sister's bed and started to put a cold cloth on her head. Immediately her eyes flew open for the first time in days and she looked her mother right in the eyes and said, "The Lord wants Glenna." She fell back and twitched before going back into unconsciousness. The next morning Glenna and the sister had died. The younger sister died from the fever, and Glenna died from unknown causes. I'm late to the game and I shared this before years ago, but why not? When I was a kid, my parents would take me to the local zoo a lot during the summer. They had a small pack of about 4 to 5 wolves and they were my favorite. 5-year-old me would sit for hours watching them run around and play or just nap. One female in particular seemed to like me. Every time I was there she came up and licked the glass as if I were her big weird puppy. I loved her the best. Well, school started up again, so I wasn't able to go to the zoo for several months. One night I woke up and had to go to the bathroom, so I didn't bother turning on the light and stepped into the hallway, and there was a wolf in our house. I yelped because it startled me, but I wasn't afraid. It just stood there looking at me until my mom came out of their bedroom to ask what was wrong. I didn't want them to think I was crazy because there's no possible way there really could have been a wolf in my house, so I told her I saw a spider. I forgot about it until the next summer when we went to the zoo and the entire pack was gone. They'd all been wiped out by parvo. I know there are a million logical explanations for what I saw, but I like to think it was my friend coming to say goodbye. It was winter break, freshman year of college. I drove up to visit one of my friends in northwestern Pennsylvania for New Year's. I needed to be back home the next day for work, so I decided to drive back at like 2 a.m. I was driving down Interstate 79. For anyone reading this from PA, it was around Grove City where this event took place, and I maybe saw 2 cars in a 60-mile span. I came up around a bend and saw what looked like a black bear in my lane, and I swerved and went off the road and crashed into the tree line next to the highway. I was in the middle of nowhere and the bear just booked it into woods. My car was fucking totaled and I knew I wasn't gonna see any cars for hours to help me out. I called 911 and they said they would come in like 20 minutes. I got out of the car and stood up on the shoulder of the highway and waited. After about 5 minutes I heard some rustling in the bushes and there it was, the fucking bear. Turns out when I went off the road I hit a cub and mama bear was pissed as all hell. I booked it over to the back of the car and hopped in the trunk. Thank God I had a big Ford Expedition so the bear couldn't fuck with it too much. For another half an hour the bear tried ramming the car and was trying to get at me in a frenzy. The police showed up and the siren scared mama bear off into the woods again. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. I've posted this before in a similar thread. For reference, this happened a few months ago. Like most couples, my husband and I have a designated side of the bed. I sleep on the right and him on the left. My comfortable sleep position is laying on my left side and facing the window, away from him. He alternates between facing the bathroom door or me. One night a few weeks back, I'm fighting my sleep. I'm laying on my left side, per the norm, but I just can't get comfortable. My neck is sort of sore from laying on my left, so I turn over and face my husband. When I turn over, I am not only faced with my husband's back, but with a large shadow standing over him. Immediately the shadow stretches to me and somehow communicates for me to turn over. I remember thinking its face was contorted, somehow expressing malice, but I can't for the life of me remember what it looked like. I didn't hear a voice, but the communication was urgent and angry. Like it wanted to hurt me. Without thinking, I turn back around and quickly fall asleep. To be honest, I'm not even sure if I was dreaming. The next morning, my husband and I wake up around the same time and go about our usual routine. I don't say anything because my husband doesn't like to talk about supernatural stuff or the like, which I felt it was. However, this morning is strange and he seems to be uncomfortable. After a lot of prodding, he finally admits he had an awful nightmare. He dreamt a demon was trying to make him do things while he was sleeping, really evil shit, wouldn't elaborate, and I woke up during this and the demon attacked me. I didn't tell my husband that I remember the same thing, only I wasn't sure if I was asleep. In 1993, our family lived in a small town called Ritzville, Washington. I was 5 years old at the time and what I experienced has left me thinking about it every single night for the past 22 years. I shared a room and bunk bed with my little brother. The room had a small, fairly deep closet located a few feet from the foot of the bunk bed. Located on the wall was a small vent that at night, when the living room light was on, would shine through, giving my room a slight ambient glow. Well, one night I had to go to the bathroom, and when I sat up and was about to take the covers off, I noticed that at the foot of the bunk bed was this tall black figure with a giant oval head that spanned the width of the bunk bed staring at me. It had two small yellow eyes that were far apart, and I noticed this thing stood around 6 feet tall. Its skin was charcoal and lumpy. I stared at it for a good 5 seconds before I threw the covers over my head. 5 seconds of this monster being ingrained into my head. I could feel the evil surrounding it. I was up for a while before I fell asleep again, so I have no idea how long it was there. In the morning, the first thing I noticed was the closet door. I make it a habit to close closet doors every night, but it was wide open. My mom was the first to know about it, and you know how most parents kind of wave off their kids' experiences as a bad dream? She didn't. She knew I saw something because they've seen things. I had nightmares for weeks after seeing it. In my dreams, this being picked me up and started torturing me. I haven't seen it since, and I never want to see it again. I worked night shift as a palliative care RN in a very big, very old nursing home. It's important to note that this home and the religious organization that ran it are currently part of the Royal Inquiry into the institutional response to the abuse of children. The nurses that had worked there for 30+ years used to delight in telling younger staff that when it was used as a children's home, they used to bury children that died in the rose garden. This old rose garden was apparently under a newer wing of the home. At least 4 times in my 2 years of working there, we would have elderly, close to death patients wake, totally lucid in the dead of night, and ask us, please tell the little girl to get out of my room, or please get that little boy out of the corner, he's looking at me. Being in this huge, dark, old, creepy building that had a very awful history, and then that happening? Fuck that. I would never do my rounds alone when it happened. It was terrifying. It made my blood run cold, and I'd get a friend to work with me the rest of the night. I was not the only person this happened to, either. It was a regular occurrence. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more daily videos, and join the Spooky Squad.